All right, so the first thing I always like to ask people is just simply, why do you want this job?
That's a great question. I actually had somebody, one of the labor leaders I was meeting with said, "Why are you a masochist?" And I know it's a tough job, but I've always in my life just been fueled by the desire to create positive change. And I actually got right out of college in Minnesota, came to Seattle. This was way back in 1991. And I started a nonprofit for women and girls to create space for them to like find their voice via art, writing, performance, music. It was really fulfilling and lasted for 5 years. And then, Seattle kind of started to become a tech city. And I was doing graphic design. I kind of came across this new field called user experience design. And it was all about, this combination between psychology and technology and, like the way people work and solving problems, solving big problems, and I loved that combination. And, including design and writing and all these things, and I thought that user experience design might be a really good way to create positive change in the world. And then I got this opportunity to be a contractor at Amazon. This was in 2002 when Amazon was kind of a baby company. There was about 3,000 people at the company at that time. And it was an exciting time to be there, and I did feel like I was doing good things and building good things, like making Amazon more accessible for more types of people than just sort of geeky white men. And kind of helping technology remember its conscience. User experience designers are kind of like the soul of technology. They're kind of there to say, hey, how is this really landing on people? It's not just about the profit. We have to make this about something that's going to make people's lives a little bit easier, a little bit better, and that's what we should be focused on. And that's always the designer. That's what the designer brings to the table. I was actually Amazon's first principal designer. So this is so way back when. But then I had my kids, and that just changed everything for me. I started to really think a lot more about the future and their future, and it's kind of crazy that kind of maybe it takes your own kids to make you click into that, like, oh, this is what really matters. But I kind of started to see these two big forces that were really going to shape our future and my kids' future. And being in tech, one of them was obvious. It was artificial intelligence. This was back then, but even now we see how that's kind of already taking a big leap forward with ChatGPT. I don't know if you've been following that at all. And then the other one was the climate crisis. And the more I learned about the climate crisis, and the more I understood the urgency and the time frames that we were dealing with and the path that we were on, I realized that all these things that I had cared about in my past, women and girls and artificial ethics, how to create ethical, artificial intelligence, wouldn't matter that much if we didn't have a planet to live on. So I kind of decided to throw all my weight behind climate. And I'm actually getting to the answer to your question. Long story. Try to get there. So I started doing, I always think start where you are, which is what I love actually about this job, is I want to start where I am. When you want to make change, you start where you are. I was at Amazon, so I was like, okay, I'm going to see what Amazon could do. Amazon's not actually doing a good job on climate at all, and I started kind of pitching some ideas to the VPs that I knew, and I had done that in the past with other ideas, and resources would come and teams would be built, and people would say, oh, that can't be done, and I would say, yes, it can, and we would do it. And I have, a dozen plus patents to prove that I was able to make big ideas happen. But they didn't want to talk about climate. it was sort of like, it just was a hot potato. Like nobody wanted to touch it. And so I just felt like I needed to make a change. I kind of felt like I either need to walk away from Amazon, but here's this company that I've put, at that point, probably 14 years of my life and my career into helping really build that company. And it was, I didn't really want to walk away. So I decided to stay, and that's right when I found there was a small group of employees who had filed or had written a shareholder resolution to ask Amazon for a climate plan, to just say, have a plan. Because at that time they didn't even have any goals or any plans. And so I signed on to that shareholder resolution, and then that sort of kicked off this organization that I co-founded, which is Amazon Employees for Climate Justice. We're still in existence, still trying to bring, pressure to the right pressure points to make Amazon be a good corporate citizen. And we organized thousands of Amazon employees. We had 8,700 employees sign, in public online, which is the first time anyone had ever done that, like with their names. We organized 3,000 people to walk out for the global climate strike in 2019. All around the world. People from Berlin and South Africa, and we just had it was super exciting, and I spoke on the steps of City Hall. In front of this, it was that youth-led global climate strike, and it was amazing, and Amazon really responded, and that is, our group is widely credited with bringing about Amazon's climate pledge, and but that got me in trouble. And I figured it probably might, and then when COVID came around, the warehouse workers were asking for our support because we had had good luck changing Amazon in the past, and we said absolutely, and our group set up a kind of a town hall between tech workers and warehouse workers, and within 2 hours Amazon fired me because they didn't want tech workers talking to warehouse workers. So in 30 seconds my 20-year career was ended. Actually, it was in COVID, so my son was sitting right over there on the couch, and he heard the whole thing. It was like a 30-second phone call, and he said, "Mom, did you just get fired?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." And he said, "Is it about the climate stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And he said, "Do you have any regrets?" Which for a 13, he was 13 at the time, it's kind of a wise question. I don't know, but I said, "No, I don't, because I'm doing this for you." But the stories I heard, like right after that, this young kid, UCLA student, his dad's first generation immigrant from the Philippines, and he was working in California at Amazon in the warehouses, and he would kind of get dropped right when it would come time that they would have to kind of pay benefits, and then he'd take some time off, and then they'd get another contract, and he'd start again. And he had just started a new contract, and he started to have cold symptoms, and you couldn't take a day off. They didn't have any paid day off. They didn't have appropriate PPE. They weren't 6 foot distancing. They weren't slowing down operations long enough to just get up to speed on all of these new ways of operating that a pandemic might force a global supply chain to need to do. This guy, you couldn't get a day off unless you had a positive test, but it took a week to get a test and a week to get your results back. This was just the beginning of COVID. We didn't know anything, So he did have COVID. He did give it to his wife, and then he did die. And so I'm talking to this kid who contacted me to say thank you, which is just like, if anyone knew what I knew, I think anyone would have done what I did, So anyways, what that whole experience taught me was that when when we stand up and speak out together, we can make massive, monumental change, and that's what we did in that group and at Amazon. And so, you know, I'm a mom. I'm a mom who knows how to love, but I also know how to fight and I know how to win. And actually, Amazon, the National Labor Relations Board, brought Amazon to court for firing me. They did fire me illegally. And Senators Warren and Booker and now VP Kamala Harris signed an open letter to Jeff Bezos contesting the firing. So it had made, you know, national, even international news at that point. And I certainly don't have any regrets, and I learned a ton. And, you know, I would love to take what I've learned from all of my experiences, which is, you know, caring, listening, learning, being endlessly curious about humans and what we need and what makes our society work, how we can make our society better, fighting for justice, collaboration, building, you know, coalitions, organizing, getting people together and creating monumental change. And I would love to bring that to my district and our city.
Some people say after a period of time, the past couple of years of activists on the city council, that they're looking for someone different.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that we need right now that you would counter that we need to bring
Mm-hmm.
this kind of activism to?
Well, I guess I don't know maybe what people mean by activism, and like I said, the choices I made were for me just about doing the right thing. You know, I didn't see another way to do it. I didn't feel like it was a choice for me to not stand up. I could afford to lose my job. I knew I might lose my job, but I could afford to. I'd be okay. I could put food on the table the next day. But that would not be true of the warehouse workers. And I felt like I needed to do what I could do. I feel like we all need to do what we can do. There's so much work that needs to be done, and so many things that are changing in our world that are going to either be opportunities that we can lean into, or things we can kind of stick our head in the sand and pretend they aren't happening, but that's just gonna put us further behind. And so my vision for Seattle is to lead the way into a new green economy and to attract the kind of industries and companies who want to be good neighbors, who want to care about people and the planet, and create great jobs, union jobs, jobs that can build our middle class that's kind of getting squeezed out of existence. And it is such a new opportunity that there's 18 million new jobs that need to be created by 2030 to meet the Paris Agreement goals. The two industries that I think are going to be booming in these next few years are going to be, how do we respond to the climate crisis, and how do we respond to artificial intelligence and building it in an ethical way that will benefit humans and society and create jobs, not take jobs. And so those two industries would be things that I would love to see Seattle become a welcoming place, and not just be welcoming and create the initiatives that would bring those businesses, but to also create the feeder schools that would serve as both a magnet for the people that want to come to learn how to be reskilled and or just build a career in one of these many industries that we've already seen they're already happening. They're already coming up everywhere, some in our town already. But build those schools that attract both the students and then the industries that I would hope would be here.
What do you think the city specifically, though, can do towards some of what you just mentioned?
there's much we can do. You know, and we do, I don't want to miss the fact that we absolutely need to deal with homelessness, policing the way that we police, and crime in the city. We need to deal with affordable housing. Well, we need to do all of these things with, you know, in ways that will help us build resiliency and help us flourish in, you know, in the coming years where we're dealing with the climate crisis and you know, the rise of artificial intelligence as it continues to grow. So specifically, you know, I would love to create the initiatives that would bring the companies in. I would love to, you know, we have the South Seattle Community College, and I would love to make that the college in our district that is the place to come and learn these new, you know, get skilled and learn for these new careers. And, you know, we need to continue to think about density for housing along mass transit lines, as we're seeing. We're getting you know, light rail here into West Seattle. It would be great to have some more multi-family, you know, dwelling units along the routes. It would be great to see bike paths, like super safe bike paths that that connect to those to the routes, and we can have these walkable, livable, affordable communities. West Seattle and Georgetown and South Park are communities where people love to live and raise families, and they love to stay in these communities to see their grandkids grow up. And we want to keep these communities livable and affordable for those families and not have them be forced out by, you know, the crazy prices that are happening. Did I answer your question? There's so many more things I want to say.
The specifics, and obviously, you know, it would be get elected, you have to work with people, draft things, but what in particular, such as you mentioned a couple times now, the initiatives to encourage these kinds of, you know, jobs, companies, industries, a tax break or something else? What sort of initiative do you think?
That I think I need to learn a lot more about, you know, and explore what possibilities there are. At this point, I don't think I'll ever have all the answers, and I don't think I'll ever pretend that I do. But I will promise that I will seek experts, diverse set of experts, and listen and learn, and seek a diverse set of constituents and listen and learn about what could work for our city.
That leads me to ask you, since you've, you know, mentioned your curiosity and all the different ways that, you know, you've been an avid learner. Tell me when you decided to run for city council, and what you've been doing about sort of, you know, learning about city operations maybe before and after that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am one of those perpetual learners. I think I would have loved to stay in college my entire life. And I am I have sort of an insatiable, you know, drive to learn as much as I can. And, you know, at Amazon, you can't, you know, that was one thing I learned from that culture. Like, you have to know your stuff, you know. I remember sitting, there was a conference room outside of Jeff's conference room where the people who were waiting to go in to present to Jeff would be all sort of queued up and waiting. And there was so much adrenaline and panic in that room. You felt like it was dripping off the walls, because you have to have your stuff together. You have to have your data. You have to have thought always around. And then you'd still go in and he would pick out the one thing that you knew you didn't have an answer to, and you would, you know, so I'm used to that. I'm ready for that. And so what I've been doing so far has been reading everything I can read and learning everything I can learn and talking to so many people already, you know, just meeting with labor leaders and community leaders and knocking on doors. And I have time still, it's early, and I'm really looking forward to learning what I need to learn and being prepared so that I can be, someone that my community would want to elect and that I would be honored to serve.
Is there anything that you think that in the last few years that the current city council did that you said right on?
I think there's been some good, I think we do need some progressive taxes. We do need to build revenue for the city. I'm thankful that the West Seattle Bridge was repaired. I like that we keep getting park levies so that we can keep our parks and our beautiful. We have such a beautiful city. We can keep it as beautiful as we can. But I think that when I think about District 1, our district, I think there's an opportunity. I feel like District 1 needs a big dose of big thinking. It's been a while since there's been a big investment here in our district. There's a lot of districts that can sort of point to and boast about a major investment that has come to their district. And I would love to see, I feel like it's our turn, and I would love to see, the colleges, like I mentioned. I would love to see the colleges be built up better here. I would love to see, our ferry terminal become the most state-of-the-art green ferry terminal with maybe a fleet of electric ferries that, foot ferries. I would love to see, even just a spray park at Alki for a hot day, or a bigger, better community pool with a lazy river, or our golf course. Like my son actually drives to Jefferson Park to shoot, balls at the driving range. How about our golf course? Could we have a brand new clubhouse or a double-decker all-weather driving range? So an indoor sports center I would love to see. Selfishly, I play tennis. I would love to see indoor tennis courts, but all types of sport courts that could give our kids something to keep off the streets. So that's what I would love to see for District 1.
Which leads me to ask, how did you wind up in West Seattle? And from where?
I've been here for 20 years. I've lived in West Seattle for 20 years. And I've lived in Seattle for 33 years. Like I said, I came out from Minnesota right after college because my dad moved out here and remarried. And so I had a place to drop my bags and have a roof over my head until I got a job, And my sisters both came out as well. My sister actually lives right across the street there, my twin sister. And my older sister lives in the Central District. And I loved Seattle the minute I got here. It was sort of like, it had the authenticity, I think, of the Midwest, with a bit more of the spirit of adventure, I guess, coming up from California. A little bit more of that think big, like don't sort of think, well, this is the way things have always been. A little bit more of a, I don't know, inventive, spirit of invention. So.
Yeah, I can identify with that. We got here in the early 90s too. We've talked about that often, about what an interesting place it was. How so much was happening, so much was changing. And even the mayor sort of... Did you watch the mayor's State of the Union speech?
I read it.
Oh, okay. Close. Anything you think he hit on that was of particular interest?
I have been hearing, and I like to hear that I feel like we're starting to talk about climate in regular discourse. And even as I went around knocking on doors, if I didn't bring up climate, they would bring it up. Or if I brought it up and said, well, what do you think? Is this important for us right now? And it was, you know, the answer was like uniformly, absolutely. Like we need to do this. We need to have that lens, and it needs to be also with an equity, focus on equity, because we know that you know, the climate crisis hits the most vulnerable among us first and worst. And we see that in South Park and Georgetown. Air quality, you know, highest rates of asthma, just the pollution down there, the flooding that happened in South Park. And, you know, I talked to one South Park resident. He's a dad. He was born there. Now he's raising his kids there. He loves his community and he wants to stay. But with so much air pollution, you have to kind of ask that question, like, is this the right thing for my kids? And that's a terrible thing to have to you know, choose between. Like my neighborhood that I grew up in, that I want to raise my kids in, and my kids' lungs, you know? That's not that's just wrong. We need to fix that. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do.
That's what I was going to ask, is that after you know, saw the light, so to speak, of what you said, you realized that some of the other things didn't matter if we didn't have a, you know, planet left. Mm-hmm. What is it like to feel that you know that, and to talk to people like the people you bump into, or even the ones who don't say it's important?
I do sometimes feel a bit like I'm walking around and wondering, like, why aren't how are you guys not as sort of concerned about this as I am? And I think it's a little bit of how you tune your news sources. You know, if you're really paying attention, I think, and you happen to have sort of channeled in, it's pretty hard to not see it. You know, we see it happening now. We have these terms that up until a couple years ago, I never heard. Heat dome, wet bulb temperature, atmospheric river, bomb cyclone. You know, and then we have these crazy wildfires and smoke events. What are we thinking? And this is, you know, I mean, we're behind the ball, and we really need to get out in front. And Seattle is so perfectly positioned to lead here. Lead the world here, you know. And when we create pro-planet, pro-human, pro-business policies, not only will we thrive, but it will send a shockwave across the company or across the country, and potentially even the world, of what is possible. And I would love to see us lead that. We can.
So you're optimistic?
I am. There's no reason not to be. I mean, there are, but like, there's reasons to be concerned for sure. But what better to do than fight like heck?
Thank you very much. It's a good opening shot.
Thank you.